animated series by Rooster Teeth. Check it out at roosterteeth.com.
Hello, this video is sponsored by the spot on my face. It's really sexy. Oh, actually, this video is also requested by Jason Fry, and we're celebrating because his was the first comment on my channel. If you'd like to request a video, I can take suggestions over on Patreon. $1 Patreons get the art featured, $2 Patreons get access to exclusive content, and $5 Patreons can make video requests. Let's crack on then. Tyrian is a creepy character, yet a compelling one. Does this leitmotif convey the same? Absolutely. We're going to take a look at how music can portray mad characters. I'm also going to contrast Tyrian's theme with Jaune's theme to investigate in their potential connections since they're ambiguous interactions from Volume 4. Remember that? When Tyrion's like, "Ooh, I'm interested in you," and Jaune is like, "Daddy." Now let's look at the theme on its own. Firstly, it's played on a glassy percussion. Secondly, it's played in E harmonic minor, and let me get my guitar. And the one chord of the key is E flat minor major 7th, which is the chord that the piece spends the most time on. Another thing is that it's a waltz, so it's in 3 quarters, and it's got a super slow tempo. A very interesting thing is that it plays long, restless phrases. The longest streak is like 13 consecutive quarter notes. Another thing is that there's a clear distinction in frequencies. The melody has a really high pitch and the bass has a really low pitch. So there's a gap in the middle. Lastly, it's got multiple sections. The whole thing is played in the first appearance of Tyrian, but in later appearances, only certain extracts from the whole theme get featured in the episode. Let's delve into the details then. The instrumentation. The timbre of the instrument kind of resembles a music box, right? And the music box is kind of a childish instrument. However, it's often used in horror. Why? Because it contrasts a tense scene and makes it creepier. Also, I don't believe it's actually a music box. I speculate it's a piano that has been recorded. It's been put through EQ and reverb effects. A reverb would just be a normal echo effect, which gives us like nice ambience since the establishing scene is in a wide space like Oni Yuri. And the EQ effect is more complicated. EQ stands for equalizer, and it manipulates the frequencies of a sound. What does that mean? So every sound has its own frequency signature. For example, my voice probably has a tiny bit of bass frequencies, lots of mids, and a little bit of treble. So with an EQ effect, we can manipulate how these frequencies are distributed. So with an effect, I can manipulate my voice to sound like it's coming through a radio by boosting the mids and cutting out the bass and the treble. Or I can boost the bass if I wanted to. Or I can boost the treble, but that would be really annoying. Anyway, the key is E harmonic minor. We went over that. And it's more dramatic than creepy. Not only is it minor, it has dark intervals like the flat 3rd and the flat 6th. But it also has a huge interval between the flat 6th and the major 7th, which is really cool. It's quirky. I want to point out that the interval between the minor 3rd and the 1st, it's dark, definitely, but it's not dissonant. It's a slightly different story with the interval between the 1 and the major 7th. Kind of dissonant, but you can make some very nice major 7th chords. It's a very specific vibe and it's relaxing. But if we mix those two relatively consonant intervals, so the 1 and the minor third and the 1 and the 7th, we get... Why does it sound so dissonant? Right? It sounds weird. I speculate it's because that the minor third is obviously a minor third to the first, but it also acts as a major third to the flat 7th. So it's in more ways than one. It's kind of like playing a minor and a major on top of each other. Now, why did I point that out? Because this is an interval that's found in the 1 chord. We get, so it's E flat minor major 7th. And we get that weird, awkward interval. Not only is this chord a mix between minor and major, but also the minor third, the 5th, and the 7th, on their own, they sound augmented, which sounds mysterious, ambiguous, uncomfortable. Why? Well, augmented chords are symmetrical. They're made up of intervals of major thirds. If we take a root note and we go up a major third, we get the second note of the augmented chord. And from there, if we go up another major third, we go to the third note. And from there, if we go up another major third, we go back to the root note just an octave up. So that's what I mean by symmetric. It loops back on itself if we keep building it upwards or downwards. This means that it doesn't point in any particular direction. It doesn't want to resolve anywhere. That's why it's so ambiguous. So it has similar characteristics to the minor major 7th. Even though E flat minor major 7th is the chord that the theme spends the most time on, it strays from the key to build chromatic descents. That means that they go down 1/2 step at a time. I've just realized that this piece plays the major 7th on the most dissonant times possible. For example, on the first beat of these 3 measures, which are all places where the bass plays the first, which goes into dissonance. Let's look at the rhythm. It's a waltz. It's in 3/4. And what does that convey? I mean, a waltz is a typical ballroom song from the 1800s. So it's associated with romance, which fits Tyrian's poetic and devoted personality quite well. The tempo is very slow, since the scene is trying to establish Tyrian's theme while trying to build suspense, which explains why the whole piece is played rather than one of the melodies like in later appearances, and why it's so slow. The specific piece has 2 obvious voicings, the melody and the bass. The melody is in the altissimo range, so it has very high pitches, while the bass plays very low notes. The consequences of this are a gap in the mid-range. Usually, composers use this technique at the start of a piece and leave room for other instruments that come later into the piece. The missing frequencies make the listener want to fill the gap, creating a small tension which is resolved when the mid-range is filled in the climax by the whole orchestration. Tyrian's theme doesn't do that. It uses the tension but never resolves. The EQ is most likely used to even accentuate this effect, to scoop out the mids. When this video was requested, I listened to the leitmotif, and I immediately thought that it resembled Mary's theme from RWBY. Now, I'm gonna spoil the hell out of RWBY, which is in my opinion an amazing game, so go play it if you haven't. I'd rather you went and enjoyed RWBY rather than you gave me my precious watch time. Excuse me. So Mary is crazy, kind of. She isn't a psychopath like Tyrian seems to be. She doesn't seem to enjoy violence either. It's more that she lacks empathy. Mary doesn't realize the consequences of her own action, and that makes her somewhat unpredictable and frightening to be around. Unpredictability is a common denominator in crazy characters in media. Another thing to take into account before we move on to a theme is that she's a child. Her motivation revolves around playing with others forever and ever. The key, it's in E minor. It's way less creepy, rather it's more dramatic. This is the consequence of the classic 1 to 5 and 4 to 5 to 1 progressions, which aren't especially unpredictable rather than other dramatic songs like Crow's theme. But it's the tension and resolution that does the job. The 1 to 5 progressions provide tension, and the 4 to 5 to 1 provide resolution. I must say that this track gets very creative in its use of alterations with the 5th, as in it uses lots of different chords that have the same root note, which would be B. For example, B dominant 7th, B minor, B major, B augmented. It's a waltz! Mary's a child, so it probably conveys less romantic emotions than playful dancy-pancy emotions. It's significantly faster than Tyrian's theme, and the boom pa concept is way more fleshed out, making it more fancy. The frequencies have a different signature. The melody encompasses the high range, while the accompaniment encompasses the mid range. The frequencies that are missing in this theme are the bass frequencies. The bass frequencies make music more serious and committed to the harmonies in the chords. The lack thereof makes this tune lighthearted, so more dancey-fancy. Eh? I have no life. Remember when I asked you to keep in mind the long phrases from Tyrion's theme? Yeah, this is why. Both of these lunatics themes are based around exaggeratedly long quarter note phrases. Mary's theme starts with a couple of long quarter note phrases as long as 13 notes, while in the second section the phrases are as long as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 46 quarter notes. And the fact that they all have the same duration makes it kind of awkward, kind of like a one-sided conversation that someone is trying to make sense of but ends up not understanding because the person speaking doesn't care to take any rests. Basically, it sounds like rambling. Both of these themes ramble. They don't care if they're easy to listen to. They don't really think about others. It's not like they feel empathy, you know. They just care to achieve their own personal goals. Also, long phrases are exaggerated and convey extremism, from which we learn more about the personal goals of the characters. They're extreme. My monster is a goddess. Play with me forever, you know? That's the kind of vibe. And with this, I conclude. Childish instruments and mood contrasts are very commonly used techniques in the background music of scary scenes. But the truly intriguing phenomenon is the use of long phrases. Long phrases and motifs do a good job of representing characters who reach for the extremist goals without seeing the bigger picture. The kind of characters that don't take into account others' emotions or physical pain. The kind that doesn't care to set any boundaries. And that's scary. Mary's scary because she's friends with the protagonists. But as soon as her true colors start to show, we're scared that she's going to hurt them to pursue her own personal goals. Without remorse. Tyrian obviously isn't friends with the protagonists, but he is a colleague of Emerald and Mercury's. The audience has been trained by the show to understand Emerald and Mercury as human beings with emotions and that they should be empathized with somewhat. Take a look at Volume 6, Chapter 9, and it's clear. Tyrion's unpredictability is frightening because we're scared that he's going to hurt them while we're cheering them on to redeem themselves. One of my subscribers, High Priest Funeral, suggested that I take a look at the rare occurrences of Jaune's theme to see if it can answer some questions about the Volume 4 interactions. I came to the conclusion that there is nothing to go on. Jaune's theme involves a very small melody that focuses a lot on the harmonies. On the other hand, Tyrion's theme is super long and harmonically ambiguous. After that, I started thinking about how Salem's theme could relate to Jaune's theme. But Jaune's theme is a lot about cheesy resolutions, while Salem's theme focuses on chromatically descending harmonies. Lo and behold, the latter section of Tyrion's theme is a skewed version of Salem's theme. Unfortunately, I couldn't get them to overlap. They just resemble each other in the Chromatic Descents. Does that give us more insight about his motivations? For sure. It demonstrates how important Salem is to him. So much that she's a part of his life, of his character, of his theme. Have you seen my other video about the variations in Cinder's theme? I analyze an arrangement of the theme. It's kind of maternal. And I claim that the first time this was played was in Volume 6, Chapter 9. But dear old Changraptor, aka the leitmotif dinosaur, pointed out that it also played during the Volume 5 finale, when Emerald realizes that Cinder's dead? The melody is actually identical. So shout out to Changraptor. Check him out for his leitmotif videos. And as for me, I've got more videos like this on my channel. So go surf it. Pick something you like.